Now, the Gardner Pingree House is a lovely Federalist era building designed by Samuel McIntyre. And yes, McIntyre is buried in the Charter Street Cemetery. It was built in 1813, and it has a great history. The two ghosts, one is an old captain, and the other is his housekeeper. Now, the ghost is almost certainly the ghost of one Captain Joseph White, who was murdered in that house on April 6, 1830. Now, before you start feeling sorry for Captain White, let me set the stage a little bit. He was a very wealthy man, owned the house, but he was a very evil man. To give you an idea of his character, he made his money in the slave trade, as it was becoming socially unacceptable. Yes, and continued it right up to the point where it was banned in the Constitution. Well, he was bad even by the standards of slavers. He allowed his crews to enjoy the female cargo whenever and however they wanted to. Well, dear old Captain White was rather fond of the idea of free labor and applied it liberally with his family. I mentioned he was wealthy, and kind of suggested that if the members of his family wanted anything from him, that he had this lovely will. They just had to wait till he died, and if they did things he liked, the name stayed in the will, and if they did anything he didn't like, namely like not doing free stuff for him, they'd go out. Anywho, one such relative that Captain White took advantage of was his niece, Mary Beckford, and she was a widow. And she, after she was a widow, went to the captain and said, "Help me out." And the captain said, "Sure, you can be my housekeeper, and I'll make sure that that your name is in my will if I like your work." Well, he might have taken advantage of her in more than one way, too, so it's sordid. Anyway, Mary had a daughter, also named Mary. And one day, Mary decided to marry. And who did she decide to marry but a man by the name of Joseph Knapp Jr. And Joseph Knapp Jr. was an associate of Captain White. Now, he may have been a very evil man, but Captain White was no fool. And any associate of his was not worthy to marry into his family. So he told the younger Mary that he was not fond of the idea. But Mary married Knapp anyway. And the captain responded by excising Mary's name from the will. And the captain also was rather fond of, let us say, twisting the dagger, pun very much intended. I will explain later. So he went around to all the lovely maritime establishments in Salem and said, "If you hire Joseph Knapp, I'm going to pull my money out of that I've invested with you, and I'm going to drive you out of business." Well, Knapp couldn't get a job after being blackballed, so with a little bit of help from Mary Beckford, he gets a mortgage and farm in Wynnum. And well, he had spent his entire life as a mariner. Some of them not a particularly wonderful, career prospects, but still he knew the sea and not a whole lot else. And well, he's a bad farmer. And, failed crops leads to debt. And, penury and starvation are not an awesome way of starting out a marriage. Anyway, Knapp gets an idea about maybe if the captain were to disappear, as well as his will, he might be able to get a little bit of money and maybe a job again. So, anywho, he formulates his plan. Now, if you wanted to knock somebody off, what would you do? Might not be a bad idea to go to somebody that specialized in murder for hire. Now, since neither Whitey Bulger nor the Jackal were available, since this is the 1830, he went to the next best thing. Roger Crowninshield. Now, if you're familiar with New England names, you will probably be familiar with the name Crowninshield, and it's not associated with organized crime. It is associated with philanthropy. The Crowninshields were one of the first families to make a boatload of money off of the China trade. In fact, Benjamin Croninshield's ship, the Cleopatra, is the very first American ship to circumnavigate the globe. You can see a replica of the Cleopatra's cabin in the museum, in the Peabody Essex Museum. Anyway, Crowninshield money, yes, gave us the Peabody Essex Museum. It gave us lovely things like the Symphony Hall and BSO, Boston Ballet, and contributed towards the establishment of the MFA in Boston as well. Lots of good, very well-to-do people. Well, Roger and his brother George may have had that kind of money, but they were the blackest of black sheep in the family. There was not a crime that they did not love. They are people that said yes to prostitution, yes to gun running, yes to drugs, yes to smuggling, and you better believe it, yes to burglary, and yes to murder to hire. Anyway, Crowninshield may have engaged in all these lovely things, but he did come with the Crowninshield money and could pay for some pretty fancy lawyers. Knapp probably thought the Crowninshield could get away with murder. Literally. Anywho, Knapp pays Crowninshield $500 to murder the captain. And on the night of April 6th, 1830, Crowninshield and an associate sneak in through an unlocked window. One man, probably Crowninshield, batters the captain's face in with a handmade club, and the associate stabs the captain in the heart 13 times. Well, Crowninshield may have been a good gangster, but not all of his associates were. And two of them squealed. One had gotten caught in a breaking and entering. And he said to the authorities, "I have a tale for you." Second one thought that Joseph Knapp, even though he was a man, which, let's be serious, even with a brand new wife, did frequent Croninshield's brothels on more than one occasion. The captain may have been right not to want him in the family. Anyway, the brothels are how he got to meet Crowninshield anyway. So anyway, it's just... The second associate thought that Knapp was a bit of a pansy and decided to blackmail him. Unfortunately, this other associate did not recognize that it was Joseph Knapp Jr., and the blackmail letter went straight off to Joseph Knapp Sr., who was not like his son. He was a good, upstanding Unitarian, and that blackmail letter went directly to the Committee of Vigilance. Well, testimony plus the blackmail letter, both Crowninshield brothers, Roger and George, are arrested, and both Knapp brothers, yes, Joseph Knapp had gotten his younger brother Frank involved as well, arrested too. Well, both sets of brothers are setting forth or ready to stand for trial, Crowninshield avoids the gallows by killing himself in prison. I'll explain that story a little bit later. Both the Knapp brothers are convicted. This is the one time that the famous Daniel Webster fought for the prosecution. George Crowninshield, however, gets off, and that's because he has a fantastic alibi during the time of the murders. He wasn't just sleeping with one prostitute, he was sleeping with two prostitutes. And I have to say, this is 1830, and a threesome is an excellent alibi for that time. Yeah, anywho, you might be wondering, why do I say that there's the ghost of the evil captain, forever doomed to walk the earth? Why Mary Beckford? Well, let me ask you, who opened the window? That was Daniel Webster's theory, at least, that it was Mary Beckford who opened the window. They didn't try charging her. And as a footnote, Massachusetts has had a little bit of trouble convicting women of anything after that certain unpleasantness in 1692. Guess which state has the lowest incarceration rate for female prisoners? Anyway, the next place we're going to be visiting is St. Peter's Episcopal Church, and this has a nice connection with the witch trials.